Have you ever wondered why the Berlin Wall, a symbol of oppression and division, suddenly crumbled one day in November 1989? In the heart of Europe, bisecting the vibrant city of Berlin, stood an imposing monolith of concrete and barbed wire. This was no ordinary wall, but a monument to division and the political chess game of the Cold War era. It was a stark reminder of a world split in two, where ideologies clashed, and the specter of nuclear annihilation loomed large. The Berlin Wall, stretching over 100 miles, was not merely a physical barrier but a symbol of the ideological chasm between East and West Germany. On the western side, capitalism thrived, a beacon of democracy and freedom. Meanwhile, the eastern side, under the grip of Soviet influence, was a showcase for the merits and demerits of socialism. The wall was more than just a divider, it was a scar, a wound inflicted by the Cold War. It stood as a grim testament to the human capacity for division, a physical representation of the invisible walls we often build around ourselves. But then, in November 1989, something unexpected happened. The wall, which had stood defiantly for over 28 years, began to crumble. This was not due to an act of war or a seismic event, but rather a peaceful revolution, a collective cry for freedom and unity that echoed across the globe. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a historical moment, it was a turning point, a symbol of the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. It represented hope, change, and the indomitable human spirit's capacity to break down walls that divide us. But how did this happen? What led to the fall of this seemingly invincible barrier? What forces were at play that led to this momentous event that changed the course of history? Let's take a journey back in time to unravel the mystery of the fall of the Berlin Wall. The story of the Berlin Wall is intrinsically linked with the Cold War. To understand the background of the Berlin Wall, we need to take a quick detour into the frosty corridors of the Cold War. This was a period of geopolitical tension between two world superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was a battle of ideologies, capitalism versus communism, each vying for world dominance. The Cold War was like a global chess game, but instead of pawns and knights, the players used countries and economies. Germany, unfortunately, was one of these pawns. At the end of World War II, the victorious Allies divided Germany into 4 zones, each controlled by one of them: the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France. Berlin, sitting like a jewel in the Soviet zone, was also split into 4 sectors. It wasn't long before tensions mounted. The Western Allies, advocates of capitalism, and the Soviet Union, a bastion of communism, had fundamentally different visions for post-war Germany. The Western Allies wanted to rebuild Germany and integrate it into the Western economic and political system. The Soviets, however, wanted to keep Germany weak and under their influence. The city of Berlin became a microcosm of this ideological clash. The western sectors of Berlin underwent economic recovery, becoming a showcase of capitalist prosperity amidst the sea of Soviet-influenced East Germany. The eastern sector, on the other hand, was molded into a model communist city. The stark contrast between East and West Berlin became a stark symbol of the ideological divide between East and West, communism and capitalism. The division of Berlin wasn't just symbolic, it was real and tangible. Families were split, friends separated, and lives torn apart. People living in East Berlin could see the prosperity of the West, but they couldn't reach it. The disparity was a constant reminder of their confinement, a confinement that would soon be solidified with concrete and barbed wire. Now, with a divided Berlin, the stage was set for the construction of the Berlin Wall. In the middle of the night on August 13, 1961, Berliners woke up to a city divided. It was an ordinary summer night, but one that would etch itself into the annals of history. The construction of the Berlin Wall had begun, a physical manifestation of the ideological divide that had been simmering since the end of the Second World War. But why was the wall built? The answer lies in the political climate of the time. Post-war Germany was a nation divided, carved up amongst the victorious Allied forces. The United States, the United Kingdom, and France controlled the western half of Germany, and the eastern half fell under Soviet influence. Berlin, located deep in the Soviet-controlled East Germany, was also divided amongst the 4 powers. This division created a unique situation where people could move freely between the capitalist West and communist East. However, this freedom of movement led to a mass exodus of people from East to West Germany, a phenomenon known as the brain drain. The East German authorities saw this as a significant problem. They believed that by constructing a wall, they could prevent the exodus of their citizens, particularly the young and highly skilled ones, to the west. The sudden construction of the wall stunned the world. Families were torn apart, neighbors were separated, and a city was cleaved in two. The wall didn't just divide the city physically, it was a stark symbol of the ideological divide between capitalism and communism. Here was a wall that was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a wall that embodied the fear, suspicion, and anxiety of an era. It was a wall that stood as a stark reminder of the human capacity for division and exclusion. Yet, it was also a wall that inspired defiance, resilience, and a yearning for freedom. For the next 28 years, the Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of division and oppression. But as we'll see in our next scene, even the most formidable walls can crumble under the weight of human spirit and the desire for freedom. Fast forward to the year 1989, winds of change were blowing across Europe. This was a period of seismic shifts, a time when the iron grip of the Soviet Union on its satellite states began to loosen. At the heart of East Germany, dissatisfaction was brewing among the populace. The economy was stagnating. The ideological divide between the East and West was becoming more apparent. People were yearning for freedom, for a life unshackled from the constraints of a repressive regime. They began to voice their discontent, braving the might of the state machinery. Mass protests started to erupt across East Germany. Initially small and scattered, these protests grew in strength and numbers, coalescing into a formidable force. The city of Leipzig became a hotspot for these demonstrations, with the Monday demonstrations becoming a symbol of the people's will. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, changes were afoot. Erich Honecker, the long-serving leader of East Germany, was replaced by Egon Krenz. This change in leadership, however, did little to quell the unrest. If anything, it only emboldened the protesters. The straw that broke the camel's back came in the form of a press conference held on November 9, 1989. Günter Schabowski, an East German official, made a statement about easing travel restrictions for East Germans. However, due to a miscommunication, it was understood that the borders were to be opened immediately. This misunderstanding led to a surge of people at the Berlin Wall checkpoints. The guards, caught off guard and unsure of what to do, eventually gave in to the pressure and opened the gates. Thousands of East Germans poured into West Berlin, marking the beginning of the end for the Berlin Wall. And so, in an ironic twist of fate, a symbol of division and repression was brought down not by war, but by the peaceful protest of the people it was meant to contain. On the night of November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, marking the end of an era. The fall of the Berlin Wall was more than just the demolition of a physical barrier. It was a symbolic moment that marked the end of a divided era and the beginning of a unified future. In the aftermath of the wall's demise, East and West Germany underwent a complex and challenging process of reunification. The two halves of the country, separated for over 4 decades, had to navigate the intricacies of merging two distinct political, economic, and social systems. For many, it was a time of jubilation, a time of optimism. But for others, it was a time of uncertainty and apprehension. The fall of the wall also signaled the end of the Cold War, a tense and perilous period marked by ideological and political conflict between the Western Bloc, led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union. With the wall's fall, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the threat of a nuclear war seemed to recede. Throughout this video, we've delved into the history of the Berlin Wall, from its enigmatic origins to its dramatic fall. We've explored the political climate that led to its rise, the lives it affected, and the global implications of its existence. We've seen how a physical barrier not only divided a city and a nation, but also symbolized the ideological divide in the world. But the most important lesson we can draw from the fall of the Berlin Wall is the power of the collective will of the people. It reminds us that no barrier is insurmountable when people unite for a common cause. It teaches us that even in the face of oppression and division, hope can persist, and change is possible. The fall of the Berlin Wall teaches us that no matter how formidable the barriers may seem, they can be torn down by the collective will of the people. So let's remember this pivotal moment in history, not just as the end of an era, but as a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity.